With me is Ina Eriksen Søreide. She is the chairperson of the Parliamentary Standing Committee of Norway in Defence and Diplomacy area, which is the foreign policy, and she has been the former Defence and the Foreign Minister as well. Ma'am, welcome to WION. Welcome to Delhi as well, and you had a packed visit here. We saw your meetings with the various stakeholders. You're coming from the Parliament, but essentially, what is the key focus during your India visit?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for the warm welcome. We had a wonderful stay here in Delhi so far, and we are not finished with our program yet. We are, as you mentioned in your introduction, of Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee joint, so we focus on the whole range of geopolitical issues. We focus on India's role regionally and globally, and we follow with a lot of interest the increased role India is taking on. And of course, we have bilateral issues on our agenda as well. We do research together up in the Arctic. We have just recently signed an FTA, a free trade agreement, which of course opens up a whole host of opportunities for increased collaboration. And in our time in government, we also issued an India strategy, which was the first ever India strategy from Norway. And that has actually contributed to pushing our collaboration forward.
Ma'am, you met with various stakeholders, including the Indian Defence Secretary, which is a rare, I must say, and also Indian ministers as well, the Trade Minister and of course the Parliamentary Affairs Minister as well. What kind of conversations were there, and especially when it comes to defence, because I do not remember Defence Secretary meeting a visiting delegation from a foreign country. So what was the focus in terms of how India and Norway can collaborate?
Well, it was a very interesting visit and a very interesting meeting. And for us, we try to talk to all stakeholders, be they on foreign affairs or defense, to try to get a grasp of both the regional situation, because there are tensions in the area, and India has been talking a lot about that, but also to understand the way forward for the defense sector. And what we could see was that there are some similarities in the challenges. For instance, we are also undergoing enormous changes in our defense structures in Europe at the moment. The main reason for that, of course, is that Russia invaded Ukraine. It's a full-on war happening on our continent. We're a neighboring country of Russia, which means that we also pay extra attention and being extra alert as to what Russia is doing in our immediate neighborhood as well. That also means that we're doing huge investments at the moment in our defense sector. We started the work in our time in government. It's continuing now. But we are experiencing, of course, that when all European countries are trying to acquire new material at the same time, it takes more time and it's more costly. We were also engaged and interested in knowing more about how India is now gradually replacing Russian equipment with US, UK, France as a supplier for new equipment. All of these things are extremely interesting for us in a geopolitical perspective.
To your last bit, what was the response like when it comes to India's defense imports from Russia?
Well, as we understand it, it will take time to phase out some of the material, but new equipment is being bought as we speak, especially from the US when it comes to air platforms, but also France, UK and others when it comes to command and control and other issues that are extremely important for building a defense sector. So for us, this was highly interesting to get a bit of a peek into how you are thinking when it comes to replacing old Russian equipment, because as I understand, that is a priority for India.
Ma'am, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Moscow, he was in Kyiv as well. India has been emphasizing on dialogue and diplomacy. What kind of role do you see when it comes to this ongoing war, which has ravaged and shocked Europe and your country as well?
Well, first and foremost, Russia can end this war at any time by pulling out of Ukraine and stopping the violence and the attacks on Ukraine that is not only going on a daily basis, but they are increasing in scale and scope, and they are extremely deadly. And of course, everything that one knows historically about these type of conflicts also tells you that at some point there will be at a negotiation table. The point is that Ukraine also needs to come to these negotiations from a position of strength. From Europe's side and the US side, we're doing everything we can to support Ukraine both militarily and also, of course, on the civilian side with critical infrastructure, running the state, humanitarian aid, and so forth. But the needs are enormous, and the only thing that can ensure a quick solution of this is for Russia to end the war and to pull out.
But do you see an Indian role, countries from the global south, do you see any role? Because countries of the global south have also been impacted because of this war in terms of the high debt, in terms of high food, fuel and commodity prices.
Well, I think it's extremely important for every country who wants to be engaged, and I think engagement is good, that one upholds international law and holds Russia to those standards, because at the moment Russia is continuing to breach international law, and it's having a devastating effect on Ukraine first and foremost, but on the whole continent. And as you say, this is felt, and the repercussions are felt way beyond the European continent. The food prices, the grain issues, and also the fact that it's destabilizing also many international relations.
And do you fear any miscalculation during the war?
When wars go on, there is always a risk of miscalculations. And of course, we feel it closely because Russia is our neighboring country. But I think it is extremely important that this war comes to an end, that Ukraine again can have its territorial integrity reestablished, have its sovereignty back, and only Russia can do something about that quickly by ending the war and pulling out.
Ma'am, in terms of bilateral relationship, there are a lot of things which India can get from Norway, especially in terms of renewables. How can your country help India in terms of achieving its renewable targets by providing technology and of course know-how on clean tech?
Well, you have extremely ambitious targets, which I think is very good. And we have Norwegian technology and know-how that we have been using in Norway and elsewhere for some time. There are at the moment investments taking place from the Norwegian side in different technology to uphold that goal. But this is an area where I feel that there is a huge potential, both because your goals are extremely ambitious, but also because this is an area where we have been collaborating for some time already. So we know each other, we have trust in each other, and this is a street that goes two ways. I mean, you also have an extremely well-developed technology sector that is very interesting to us as well.
Well-developed technology sector. If you can elaborate on that, because India has been taking a lead on that. I do not know whether it's gone around, but you can pay using various platforms, using UPI and all that. So how do you see that as well? What's your sense?
Well, I think it's just amazing to see how India has, in a way, leapfrogged 70 years ahead and not being on the same path that many of the other countries have been on. You are jumping directly to the new solutions. It's amazing to see. We were walking in Old Delhi today, and one of the most amazing things that I saw when walking along the streets was different small shops in the streets with fruit, with pottery, with everything, and they had a QR code which you could pay, which it could never happen in our country. So it's amazing to see how development has really leapfrogged many technological steps. I think it offers huge opportunities for collaborations, of course, but also great inspiration for other countries in how to actually embrace new technology and have that as a very vital part of the development of India. I mean, we are coming from a country of 5.5 million people. So for us to understand fully the complexity and also the challenges in a 1.4 billion people country is, well, it's not easy. So all of these things are really very fascinating to see.
And how do you see Arctic cooperation? How do you see India's role in the Arctic? Where you're leader?
Yeah, well, we actually had a very interesting discussion on that today, and we have seen increased interest from India in the Arctic. Many countries show increased interest in the region. For us, it's our most important strategic area of responsibility for obvious reasons. And we have ocean areas that are I would say 2/3 of our land areas as well, as big as our land areas. And I think one of the interesting things that we have in common between India and Norway is that we actually have an exclusive economic zone that is almost the same size, even though our two countries are very different. And we see that this is an area where you have been doing, as India, have been doing research for a long time in collaboration with Norwegian scientists and other scientists in Svalbard especially. We're focusing on climate change has been extremely important, not only to Indian and Norwegian researchers, but to the global knowledge on how climate change takes place, because in the Arctic it now takes place 5 times as fast as any other place globally. And to understand and to decode what's behind climate change, how to mitigate it, and how to avoid our globe from melting.
Ma'am, you mentioned about climate change. India has been taking a lot of lead in terms of the International Solar Alliance, the Biofuel Alliance as well. What's your assessment like? Would you like to be part of these initiatives taken by India?
Well, I think they are areas where the opportunity for more collaboration is absolutely present. And we were talking a little earlier on green technology and how to make sure that the green transition and the very ambitious plans that India has and Norway also has on trying to make that transition happen and move on to renewable energy sources. I mean, for India, you rely mostly for now on coal and oil. And of course, making that transition is never easy, but having a collaboration in areas where we can use each other's technology.
Ma'am, my last question to you is, you are the chairperson of the committee which also deals with the foreign policy. What are the convergences you see between Indian and Norwegian foreign policies? And India has been calling for reform of the United Nations Security Council. What is your sense like India, which is the most populated country, to be present on that? Right now, India is not present at that high table.
Well, as we have always advocated from Norway's side, we need reform of the Security Council. We served together as elected members of the Security Council from 2021 to 22, and it was really very interesting to see how we could develop even closer bonds between our two countries when working together on concrete issues in the Security Council. Of course, you always have the issue of the permanent members, where if they do not agree to a certain issue, things will not pass in the Security Council. On the other hand, what we have seen over the past years is also the development of a closer collaboration between the elected 10 members, which means that we are able to make changes gradually, and by that also supporting the multilateral system. We share many of the same interests and values in a well-functioning multilateral system, upholding international law. Whether you are the most populous country, a big country, or you are a small country.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to WION.
Thank you very much.